welcome to the channel. This is the first in a new series of videos, I guess, where I'm going to be reviewing films. So I will aim to get at least one review out a week. And the idea really is to not only force myself to watch more films, and maybe films I've either neglected or wanted to watch and not got round to or not made the time for, and also maybe to inspire you to watch some other films as well. So I aim to cover a broad variety of films, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. I've not got a plan. I'll just try and watch a few more films, and the films that really stand out or resonate with me, or sort of I feel like I've got something to say or share, I'll review them. So I'm going to start today. I aim to get at least one a week out, with the idea being it'll just, as I said, maybe broaden some of our students' cinematic horizons a little bit. Having said that though, I'm going to start with a film that I've been aware of for quite a long time. It's been out for like 8 years now, and it's a genre and a type of film that I'm not really, I wouldn't say I'm a fan of. I'm not a fan of these type of films, which is comic book films, but it's just something that's not really resonated with me, and this character in particular has never really resonated with me. And the film I'm going to be talking about today is Man of Steel, the 2013 let's say reboot, if you like, or reimagining of the Superman character, which was directed by Zack Snyder. Okay, so the film was written and directed by Zack Snyder, with co-writer David S. Goyer. So if you don't know anything about David S. Goyer, he's obviously got good form in the genre. He's worked in the genre before. He's directed certain films, I think in the 90s and early noughties, but he also co-wrote Batman Begins with Christopher Nolan, before Nolan then sort of opted to work with his brother Jonathan for the last two films in the trilogy. So Goyer is also a writer on Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice and some of the other DC EU films that I'll talk about in a second. So yeah, there you go. So this film then, Man of Steel 2013, is the first Superman film since 2006's Superman Returns, which starred Brandon Routh as the titular character. And I think when I remember that film coming out, I remember liking certain aspects of it and finding there were certain moments in the film that sort of did resonate with me and really got the intended or preferred response, if you like to use the correct term. But overall the film was a bit disappointing, and Kevin Spacey's Lex Luthor is not the best, and it just didn't seem to really do anything for me. I went to see it in an IMAX 3D, the first 3D IMAX I'd seen. Very impressive, but overall it left me wanting more. I thought Brandon Routh was excellent though. So Man of Steel then, it's not a sequel, it's basically an origin story, and what it is it's the first film in the Warner Brothers, what is known as the DC Expanded Universe, which is the DC equivalent of the MCU. So what I've read about the film is that there was a plan to produce this film, and there is a lot of spin-off and sequel potential in there, but I also found it quite a self-contained film as well. So it's a great start to the DCEU, and you can see how a lot of the DCEU has been built on the back of this film, especially if, from what I know, Batman and Superman in particular is going to be like a central character that runs throughout that trilogy and that franchise and ties it all together. So it's a great start. The film, as I said, like Iron Man, was used to lay the groundwork for a larger, expanded, interconnected universe. And part of the reason I watched Man of Steel actually is because I'm recording this a couple of days after the Zack Snyder Zack Snyder Justice League trailer. Say it again. Part of the reason I'm recording this is because the Zack Snyder Justice League extended cut the trailer's recently been released, and I watched that, and I'm interested in seeing how this compares to Marvel. As I said, I'm not a huge comic book fan. I've only recently caught up on the Marvel films, and I watched all of them in a very short amount of time. There were certain things I absolutely loved, other aspects of it I'm not a fan of. So yeah, I wanted to see how DC compared. So let's get on with it. Okay, so I thought the film was very much an origin story of the character, and it opens with scenes taking place on Krypton following the immediate birth of Kal-El, who is obviously Clark and Superman. Now, before I start, I want to point out a couple of things. There's many ways to approach a film like Superman Returns. There's so much going on. You could analyse it for meaning in terms of a post 9/11 text, and there's a lot going on in terms of representation of masculinity and all those things, and where America was at that time. And the film really does reflect a lot of things that was going on internally in the United States following the war on terror. But I'm not going to talk about that. I may do a more formal analysis video in the future. I've got a few ideas, but I don't want to talk about that today. This video is more of a stream of consciousness on my initial thoughts of the film, and the one area of the film that really stood out to me was with its moral message, or more importantly, or more specifically rather, how it communicated that moral message to the audience. Okay, so one thing that stood out straight away, and you can sort of you realise this straight from the start, is that the film does not adopt a classic linear structure. It's a non-linear narrative structure that is constantly intercutting between Batman as a child, or various stages of his childhood and adolescence, with him as a grown man. And what the film does, it shows it's intercutting between a young Clark and a young Kal-El developing or realising he's got these powers first of all, and his origin of these powers, and it sort of intercuts that with an older Clark who is coming to terms with the powers and sort of moving towards the big moral decision he has to make in the film, and ultimately, is he going to use his powers to save people, or is he going to hide them so he can live his own life? Okay, so that's the decision, one of the decisions that he has to make. Okay, so Superman, and my relationship with Superman. I've never really been a fan of Superman. And I've never really been a fan of comic book films, like generally as a rule, but Superman in particular has always stood out as something that's sort of been something I felt like I didn't, not that I didn't understand it, but I didn't quite see why people love this character so much. So I have seen the Christopher Reeve Superman films. I watched them growing up. Really like 1 and 2, and 3 and 4 have their own qualities and charms, but for slightly different reasons. But I've always just sort of perceived the character as a little bit too boring and a little bit too perfect, which is unusual actually, because for anyone who knows me or knows my taste in film, I do sort of gravitate, when it comes to Hollywood productions at least, to those films that have quite clear binaries of good and evil. So, my favourite film character of all time is Luke Skywalker, and he may not be the most interesting or entertaining, but there's something about what he expresses and the ideology he holds that I find very appealing. And Superman is very much that character, but maybe for me, I've always thought it's that one step too far, like he's too perfect. So when I went into the film, I did have an open mind, but I fully expected to come out saying, yeah, that was a good film, but my opinion on Superman hasn't changed. But that was before I watched the film. Okay, so the film opens with a prologue, and it details the birth of Kal-El and the murder of his father Jor-El and his mother Lara at the hands of the film's villain, General Zod. Now, I just want to make a point here that I'm a big Russell Crowe fan. I think he's great, love Gladiator and all that. But I think him being cast as Jor-El, as Kal's father, was perfect, because he just brings a sense of authority and gravitas to a role that I feel is maybe missing from other comic book movies. Having an actor of his, a performer of his acting chops, first of all, he really sells the role. But I said that gravitas and that authority he has in explaining the morality of the film, I think, is something maybe missing from other superhero films. The casting of both Kevin Costner and Russell Crowe are really, I think, stand out important aspects of the film that made it resonate with me, which we'll talk about in a minute. Okay, so following the assassination, Kal-El is put in a pod and sent to Earth. So again, standards, we all know this, or if anyone knows Superman, even in a sort of informal setting or informal man like I do, and know that story. But as soon after that, Zod kills the father figure, and he's then arrested. So his army of usurpers are then sentenced to, I'm not quite sure what happens, but they're sort of basically sent to space prison for 300 cycles, which I assume 300 years. And the rest of the film then follows Kal-El, Clark, as he develops his own power. And they also have Lois Lane, who is a go-get-em, up-and-at-em reporter, who seems to act as like a conduit between Superman and the rest of the world, or the audience who are trying to understand them. So she articulates some of the things that maybe are not expressed as clearly as they could be in the film. So like I said earlier, Superman to me has never been fully realised, or realised in a way that resonated with me, and that is until now. I think one of the reasons for this is because of the way Schneider and Goya used the two father figures to express the central moral and ideological message of Superman to the audience. He represents the potential of mankind, the potential that lies within all of us, and I think as a symbol of that potential that is in all of humanity, he's a very appealing character, but it's never really been expressed in a way that resonated with me. But I think in this film it really does. So in the film, Jor-El makes it clear that although, at the start of the film, Jor-El, the Kryptonians, they sort of represent like an ideal society. It's like utopian on the surface when you look at it. And what Jor-El makes us realise is that although technologically advanced, and they may seem quite advanced, like mechanically, the Kryptonian society's become corrupted. It's become detached. It's a bit. My mind's gone blank thinking of the word. It'll come back to me. But it's detached from reality, and it's sort of taken a step away from what makes those people human, if you like. It's been stripped away by the efficiency of the machines and the society that they produced. And Jor-El laments that. He laments the imposition of order and rules on people and on society. And he says that, him and his wife had this child, Cal, to show the potential of people. That actually, if we remove them from these restrictions we have in our society and these traps and these roles that we sort of force people in, we can actually maybe fulfill our potential. And society should be ordered and structured towards that, not technological, financial, and corporate development. And what he says, he sums up in his line. He says, "What if a child dreams of becoming something other than what society had intended? What if a child aspires to something greater?" And I think that message that he presents in the film is then built upon, and it sort of underscores what I understand as the key moral message of Superman. He says to Cal later in the film, "You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you. They will stumble. They will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun." So for me, what really resonated was that those lines of dialogue and what we see in the film is the creation of a character who represents the best of us, like the potential we can all reach. But what I found very interesting is that Jor-El himself is unable to live up to those ideals. It's do as I say, not do as I do. So he himself has sort of been a factor in the downfall of Kryptonian society, because he is a geneticist, a scientist, and he is pushing forward, or has been, this advanced society that has basically consumed itself, become decadent. There you go, that's the word I was looking for. It's a decadent society. So he sees the error of the ways, and he has a natural him and his wife Laura have a baby, and he is birthed naturally, for the first natural birth in hundreds of years, and then he's sent to Earth, where he is picked up by the Kent family. Okay, so on the other ends of that spectrum, in the moral spectrum, we have Kent's father on Earth, who is Jonathan, played by Kevin Costner. So if we think of Jor-El represents one version of morality that Clark can aspire to, or one end of the spectrum, then the Clark family represents a slightly different view of morality that Clark can aspire to as well. So at first, I think it seems like Clark's father he's there to inform the audience and to Clark that you have these qualities in you, and we humans have these qualities in us, but we stumble and we fall and we are imperfect, but you represent the perfection that we could aspire to. And he says, when the world finds out what you can do, it's going to change our notions of what it means to be human, change everything. He says, "You are the answer, son. I have to believe you were sent here for a reason. These changes you're going through, as powers, one day you'll have to make a choice of whether to stand proud in front of the human race or not." Now, these moments of moral clarity are couched in moments of amoral teaching. And what I mean by that is Jonathan spends most of his time encouraging Clark to hide his identity from the world, even suggesting that at one point Clark should have let a bus full of children die in an accident rather than expose himself, and by saving them he should maintain his anonymity. So in the film, both father figures are shown to present ideas that we should aspire to, but at the same time they both fall short of those ideals, and they're not quite living up to the standards that they aspire for in this son. And I think this is a great choice by the writers, as at least Clark, or Cal, the character, as a person who must determine his own future. Should he choose to maintain his anonymity, live his own life, and not protect others, or should he choose that ultimately to selflessly sacrifice his own life to save humanity and present that idea to humanity? And that's what he does later in the film. He is given a choice by his two father figures, but he is sort of prepared for the future by his two father figures. Half of it comes from Krypton, half of it comes from humanity, and Clark is given the decision, and he does make the right decision. He decides to actually embody both messages of both fathers and combine them into something new. And I think that's a great idea in the film, is that, you know, we as humans, as an audience, we have it within us, the potential to be good and evil. We have the potential to wreak chaos on the world, or we have the potential to wreak, and, you know, well, not wreak's the wrong word, but we have the potential to bring a lot of hope and positivity and help to the world. But sometimes we can't because of the society we're in. But Superman represents that idea of like selfless sacrifice, and that if you as an individual sort of sacrifice something and you make the right decision, it might inspire those around you to do that. And overall, I mean, over a long period of time, that is how the world will become a better place. Not through one grand action, but through a series of small selfless actions. And I think that was really expressed a lot in the film for me. So that's one of the main reasons why I liked it so much. Okay, now I could probably better articulate this if I made some notes and wrote it down, but that's ultimately what really resonated to me. So on top of that, that moral message is then presented in an aesthetic that I really liked as well. Because comic book films, Marvel in particular, have a very distinct aesthetic style. It's very clean and very colourful. And that's fine, it's great for them, but it doesn't really fit with characters in DC who are slightly more towards the grey morality, or the potential for that. So what Schneider's done, he shot it in more of a handheld style, and the colours are quite washed out, and it felt to give the film a realism and a way to engage with the film that maybe the Marvel films or other superhero films, at least for me, I've never sort of reached on that level. So I thought the aesthetic and the style was very impressive, and I think that immediacy created by the camera and the approach to filmmaking, it makes it more relatable, and that underscores and drives home the moral message of the film quite strongly for me. I said throughout the film, there were moments where I felt quite emotional by some of the dialogue that was spoken and some of the ideals presented by the film. And although the characters themselves who are saying these things maybe fall short, I think as an audience we can take inspiration from the idea itself, which is to, you know, maximise ourselves and be selfless, help those around us, and if we all do that, that is how we change the world, not through one grand action. Now, obviously, you know, someone watching this may say, oh, well, you know, what about the ending of the film? Maybe that's undone, and the light's gone off. So as I said, it's totally random and live. So the ending of the film, yeah, it does descend into chaos, basically, where Zod and his army arrives, and then it's the final 30-40 minutes of the film is just watching like a video game. And this is one of the reasons why I haven't seen the film before. A lot of the people said, or people who spoke to, including me partner, she said she saw it and it was entertaining, it was good, but, you know, what she remembers was too much CGI. And I've heard that from other people as well. Too much fighting, too much CGI, too much focus on that. And that is, I think that's a valid criticism of the film. But for me, because I was so engaged with the character, by the time that happens, I feel like the end sort of justifies the means, because it sort of maximises what I've been talking about, that moral message, and shows this is what happens when those decisions are writ large across society or across the world, you know, through wars and things like that. It's that if we allow these small decisions we make to go unchallenged or to continue to make the wrong decisions, that's going to actually, over the course of time, blow up and become a massive, massive problem. And I felt that's what the film represents. Then, you know, you could link it to 9/11 and a post 9/11 text and a criticism of the war on terror, or American foreign policy, or internal policy even. You could easily go down that route, but for me, I just wanted to keep it focused on that pure moral message, which was very powerful. You know, I was, as I said, quite emotional at certain points of the film because of that. Okay, I'm trying to think. Okay, so overall, the film perfectly expressed what Superman is, at least from my own ignorant understanding of the character. Now, if anyone ever watches this video, whether they're my students or just random people on the internet, I am more than happy to be challenged on that. You know, I was hands up. You know, I am ignorant of these particular characters. I really like Batman, like the Dark Knight trilogy, but I'm not a comic book fan, and I may have got Superman wrong. Like, for example, I still can't get my head around or understand the concept of Batman versus Superman, but I'm sure many people have explained why it's perfectly reasonable and logical. I am going to watch the film, but the thought of it just seems ridiculous. But I said I don't know the characters that well. So it conveyed what Superman is and the moral message he embodies in a way that was heartbreaking, exciting, it was beautiful to look at, and most importantly, it was inspiring. And one of the ways we can I can demonstrate that or prove that is it inspired me to start this review and these weekly reviews. I've been thinking about this for a long time, and I thought, you know what, last night after watching it, I'm going to do it. This is my first review, and I will try to get a review out weekly, or at least once a week. So hopefully what I've said is maybe, if you haven't seen the film, pique your interest. Hopefully it'll inspire you. However, if you have a different opinion, if you hate the film, if you think I'm wrong, if you agree and you watch this and you're inclined to, please leave a comment, because I will try and respond to them. And I'm always interested in what other people think, and I'm always interested in learning new things and new approaches. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll try and make this a regular weekly thing. One final point: if you've got any suggestions, any films you want me to look at or review, feel free to leave a comment, send me an email.